Blessed Day Reflection by Abia listeners. My name is Abia Grant, and we are here to reflect on our life journey. We will be discussing topics related to self awareness, self improvement, and mental health. Also, the purpose of this safe space is for us to be free to discuss the ups and downs, celebrate the wins, and talk about ways to improve the lows. So, welcome to this podcast, and I hope you gain something from this time we share together. Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to Reflection by Abia. It is your girl Abia Grant. I hope that you are having a wonderful and blessed day. At the time of recording this, I am in my room. It's Sunday. I think what's today's date? The 21st of July, and I am just sitting in a chair, looking outside, looking at my backyard, enjoying the birds chirping, and sun is sunning as well too. Before I get started, do let you guys know we have reached 100 streams on the podcast. So thank you to everyone who have been listening to the podcast, whether it's been on Spotify or iHeartRadio or Amazon Music or on YouTube. Just thank you so much just for support, and I want to say thank you for 100 streams, but I'm happy to see the growing of the podcast and having the ability to share my experiences with you and learn from, you guys as well too. Let's go ahead and get into this week's episode. This week's episode is number 27. And I kind of have a title for this episode, but I kind of don't. So I have here jotted down, is there really such a thing as balance? And then I scribbled this down, and then I, scratched it off because I was like, I'm not 100% sure if I want to go down that avenue, but we're going to go with it. Is there really such a thing as balance, although you have the tendency to do the most? And the reason why I add the tendency to do the most is because for me, it's hard for me to, when I put myself into a situation or if it's something that I want to accomplish, I have a tendency to overdo it. I have a tendency to block everything else out and allow for those things to sit because I'm focused on this one thing. And this is something that I learned in therapy about myself when I was speaking to my therapist about it and being so locked in. And when I'm so locked in, what happens is that, like I said, other things I put to the side, but then what happens with me is that I start to get burnt out. And it's like I am the kind of person where I'll work myself to the bone, but then be upset that I work myself to the bone, and then complaining that I'm working myself to the bone. But yet I am not trying to implement before I would not implement the necessary tools in order to not be stressed out or not just totally focus on this one thing, yet be exhausted. And the reason why this topic is coming up for me is because this week, I've been really thinking about my financials. I'm gonna be honest with you. And I want to make more money. And I want to not have to be so focused on this okay, I'm coasting. Like I was having this conversation with my husband yesterday about, okay, I am able to pay this bill, but I'm never really able to get ahead because my income, I'm only paying what's the necessary things to pay. Well, I pay everything, but what I'm trying to say is I'm paying the minimum. I'm trying to give them a little bit extra, which I normally do, but then I am left with not much left over, or if there's other things that I'm trying to get done, I can't get those things done because the financials are not financially. Prior to, like, I think about 2 years ago, I think it was actually when I started to go on FMLA, and maybe a little bit before that, is that I was driving part-time, delivering meals like DoorDash, I was doing, and it was a great source of income for me because it enabled me to take care of expenses that, yes, I was paying, but I wasn't giving enough. So therefore, you know how it goes. You give them just enough, then your interest rate goes up, and then it's, once the interest rate goes up, it's kind of like very difficult to get the bills underneath, control. But for me, as I was mentioning earlier, is that I get so focused on that one set task, that being the financials of making the money, that I was consistently working every single weekend. Like every Sunday, I was working. And what started to happen was that I started to become very exhausted. And it started to impact my home, not only just me myself, it started to impact my home, where I focus more on the financials. Oh, well, I could be making money doing this, so therefore I would, if there's things that needed to get done in the house, yeah, I would do them, but I'll be so burnt out doing them. It was as if I was putting the weight of everything on me. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning into Reflection by Abia. Feel free to check out the podcast Instagram page and my personal page, simply.abia, also on Instagram. The links will be available in the show notes, so let's get back to the podcast. So, this week I've been kind of thinking about, like, is there really a true thing of balance? Like, does balance actually exist? And I've spoken about this in prior podcast episodes. I believe I've touched on a little bit of balance, but obviously the word is there, but in life, is there such a thing as you are able to do different things and not feel so overwhelmed, or not feel like you're giving up a situation in order to accommodate the situation? And pretty much where I'm at is that I feel like there is no true balance. I feel that once you eliminate a situation, or once you do not do this particular task or whatever it may be, and you're focusing on something else, that means that you're giving up that initial in order to focus on the second thing. And what I'm starting to also realize is that only way, there's no such thing as true balance. Like I said, I'll start off there. So what I'm learning is that in order to create a best scenario type of situation, is that for me, I feel like I have to learn how to compromise. And I have to learn to figure out what is priority. In my past, what I would do is, as I mentioned before, cut said situation off to focus on whatever else I'm trying to do. And I'm realizing when I do that, I feel like in a way that I've given up. I feel like in a way it's like, oh, well, that is important to you, but yes, the next situation is the other thing is important as well too. But I feel like I'm just not giving it my all. Also, at the same time, I'm not even sure if that makes any sense. But also at the same time, what happens with me is when I am in a certain situation, I kind of feel conflicted because if I'm resting, sometimes I'll be like, dang, you could be making this amount of money. Like for me, I can't say everything goes back to financials, but speaking about this topic, it's a lot of times financial based as far as like the balance and everything. Maybe it'll change to something else later down the road, but for right now, this is what it is. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not something that I necessarily verbalize out in the open, but in my head, I'm like, okay, how can your situation be better? And I think for me, it's because I'm be honest with you. I feel like because not saying I correlate everything to when I was younger, but a lot of things factor into when I was younger. I seen a lot of the women in my home, because I mentioned as, prior episodes that I grew up with a female dominated household. All our women worked hard in the family. And I feel like sometimes if I'm not working hard, I'm not doing enough. Like I'm not living up to the expectation of what I saw. And when I do that, when I'm in that feeling, it's this is when that cycle kind of comes. Like, okay, you can't be making money instead of relaxing or whatever. Like all the things I mentioned before. I'm starting to learn and see that although the people in my family worked hard, they did not experience as much fun, as much fun as they could have. And I'm just really thinking about it because I really, prior to, like, I write notes down for the podcast and everything, but it's not until right now I'm sitting here and I'm like, it just hit me why I think the way that I think. Like I said, I have to have compromise. I have to set priorities for whatever that I'm trying to accomplish. Um, and where my headspace is at, where I've been thinking about is doing what I need to do for this moment. Like for me, I have a tendency to think so ahead. Okay, if you do this set situation, then these are the successes of that situation. And although I feel like that is good to do, I feel like being in the moment allows you to better appreciate what you have achieved. I feel like for me, once, like with the financials, once I reach this quota or reach this dollar amount that I personally have set in my head, or the things that I'm trying to take care of, is what I did before is like, okay, what do I need to do next? What do I need to accomplish next? And not celebrating the wins from what I was able to do in that moment. And I'm also thinking that in my head, I need to learn to set limits for myself. I it's it's honestly about a give and take situation. And the only reason why I do say that is, again, because I have the tendency to overdo it, have the tendency to do most and burn myself out. And I have to know that it's not about, okay, get it done, work so hard, burn yourself out, and then that's that with that. It's about balancing, quote unquote, supposedly, putting my energy towards the first situation and be like, okay, I did a little bit of that. All right, check. Putting a little of my energy to the second situation, taking everything I did from the first, putting that to the side, moving on to the second situation, putting a little bit of energy there. Okay, check, I did that. Take that energy, put it into the next thing, and not try to do everything at one time. And or put so much energy to a certain situation that I don't have any to put into the next one. And I'm again, like I mentioned before, burning myself out. I mean, that's honestly what I've been thinking about this week. It's just not creating such a space for myself, and let me know if this is something that you do, guys. Creating such a obstacle for yourself, and then you get through the obstacle and then it's like, okay, what's next? Let me know if that is you. And, you know, let me express how you feel in that situation. Like, have you seen successes doing that? Or has it been like, dang, I'm burnt out? Also, like, tell me how you try to balance. Because maybe I'm just not doing this. Maybe I'm not doing this the way that I need to be doing this. Maybe I could learn from somebody else that's kind of figure out this situation of life. Because I feel like for me, this is the kind of the best way that I think that I can do it. But maybe you have some tool that is useful for me. Like I said, this journey in life is not easy. Adulting is not easy. And for me, I'm just taking it one day at a time and figuring this out and listening to myself, listening to my body, listening to my mind, taking those breaks, and trying to enjoy more, bring more joy into my life and bring more excitement into my life. It's like work hard, but don't burn yourself out. Enjoy the successes that you have accomplished. Hey everyone, thank you for listening to the podcast. So let's get into today's word. So, guys, let's go ahead and get into the word of the day. The word of the day is precious, and the definition of precious is a high worth or cost. And the synonyms that I have for precious is valuable, worthy, wanted, cherished, loved, and invaluable. And for me, it's like I'm starting to realize, well, I've been realizing for over the past year or so, is that, you know, where I'm at is very precious. Where my life is at is very precious. And as I had mentioned before, we need to understand that we should be cherishing all the moments in our lives because we can't go back. We're never going to possibly never live these experiences again. So once you live them, it's over. You move on to the next experience. And it's very important to value what you've done. It's very important to value the experience that you have been in. I say sometimes whether it is a good or bad experience, because I think even, talking necessarily about a bad experience, because we all know what happens with a good experience. But with a bad experience, it's like what you were able to accomplish in that bad experience, what you were able to learn. Like you do in a way, I won't necessarily cherish the lows, but you are understanding that said situation, how it made you feel, and the things that you have learned in order to make yourself feel worthy, make yourself feel like, okay, I appreciate myself. Again, using one of the synonyms, I love myself. So life is very precious, guys. We got one shot at this. But guys, that is where I'm going to leave this week's podcast episode. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode and you've learned something from what I've shared with you. I really want you guys to comment and let me know your viewpoints on balance. And, it's all about learning from each other. So definitely leave your comments below and I would appreciate that. All right, guys. So stay blessed out there in those streets. Make sure that you treat others kindly out there in those streets. And God willing, I will talk to you guys in next week's podcast episode. All right, guys. Bye. Thank you for listening to Reflection by Abia. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about today's episode and share the podcast with your friends and family. The link will be available in the show notes.